I'm very excited to kick off the next panel discussion with our lovely ladies, Malika and Molly. I'm going to let's spotlight your pins there, and Malika. Add spotlight. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are very privileged to have two PhDs with us who both happen to specialize in this incredibly interesting space that we call citizen science. And citizen science is a very broad term. So we're going to use the next 25 minutes to dive into what it means in quite different versions of the practice that Malika and Molly both work in. But effectively, we're going to explore a simple but very powerful idea. What happens when we turn every traveler, every community member, every one of you in the audience into an active participant in understanding and protecting nature? Citizen science is no longer a niche. We've seen this throughout our community. It's a tool that is leveraged by the long run members in so many different and interesting ways, and really around the globe. It's becoming a critical bridge between data, decision making, and human connection to place. Three pillars that I think we tend to talk about a lot in the sustainable tourism community, but also more broadly, and they're certainly gaining more traction as the conversation evolves. So we're going to look at how this is playing out in practice, from cutting-edge biodiversity data collection to platforms that bring that data to life through the human and essentially the guest experience. So first up, Malika is going to chat to us. As I said, Malika and Molly both have PhDs. Malika is the co-founder and chief science officer of Guardians of Earth, a platform that is reimagining how humans engage with nature through technology, storytelling, and systems thinking. What I loved when I met Malika was she told me that she is a physicist by training, and she felt extremely frustrated sitting in Australia, watching her son not connect with nature in a meaningful way. So she took her background in science and the fact that her son was interested in gamification and gaming, and married the two to create this incredible platform. So effectively, she's building tools that reconnect people with environments around them, turning those everyday interactions into meaningful contributions to biodiversity and biocultural knowledge. Molly is going to chat to us after Malika and just give us a quick background, but she is a biodiversity expert specializing in environmental DNA, or as we like to call it, eDNA, one of the most exciting frontiers on how we understand nature at scale. Molly works with Nature Metrics, where she helps organizations translate complex biodiversity data into real-world decision-making. So think huge organizations distilling it and turning that into meaningful decisions. Her work bridges rigorous science with practical application, from global corporates to on-the-ground conservation teams. And she is going to take us through how she takes that big picture of data collection and science and really brings it down literally back to earth and back to that human and individual touch, and bridges that gap between all of us and this incredible practice in the scientific and biodiversity realms. Okay, so I am going to hand over first to you, please, Malika, if you can just give us 5 minutes of background on Guardians of the Earth and a little bit of what inspires you in this space.
Thanks a lot, Rosie. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Please do, yeah.
Yep. So first of all, thanks so much, Rosie. I hope everyone can see the screen. Is it good?
Yeah, it's on full screen.
Good, good. And I would first like to commend Lip. I mean, that was such an amazing, inspiring story. I've been to a lot of resorts, but I still just felt, it actually felt so good to hear it and listen to their journey. It's incredible. And I just feel privileged that I'm being here and listening to you all and hopefully contributing in some little way to all of your incredible work. That brings me back to the platform and why I created it in the first place. So as we've seen, you know, these people are creating some amazing outcomes with their hard work. But a lot of the times, a lot of the value is kind of not captured. It is kind of left around, and it's not used in any meaningful way to further their work. You can look at the cultural knowledge that is residing in these communities, the ecological knowledge that's in the heads of these guides and the safari, guides, as well as the local, elders who've lived there for generations. That knowledge evaporates. It's not recorded anywhere. And then all the guests that attend these, visit these resorts, they do incredible contributions to the community, to the location, to the place. But again, that connection is not really visible. And then the people to whom the health of that land matters most, which is probably the resort stakeholders as well as the local communities, they do not have a stake in the documented health of the land. Say, for example, the health of the land is getting really better, which it is, as we can see from these examples. How can their stake in it be recognized and made sure that they can benefit from it in many ways, not just the ways that we've seen are happening on the ground? So I'm just going to, because this is showing the interface between the my platform and the resorts, I'm just going to jump to slide 5 just for a second. So like the guest moment is a guest comes, and what I'm trying to show here is just the engagement between the platform and the resort via the guest. The guest comes, the receptionist, or at a desk there is a QR code, or the safari guide hands them a QR code, they scan it, and that is it. They can log in a photograph of a plant or some species or a moment, and that's all they need to do, and then they can carry on with their whatever they have come there to do, be work with the communities or engage with the nature or just relax. Now, what happens once they have done their little bit? It's just so little. It could be just one photograph that they have submitted of maybe acacia species that's growing there. What happens is on the resort side, forgive me for this bad, grainy image. I tried my best, but this was the best I could capture. What happens is on the resort side, every little data that flows in, be it from the guests, be it from the local community cultural practitioners, every bit of it is captured and it's scored. We've got a team of verifiers that are either academically qualified or even local knowledge experts that score every piece of information and give it what we call a bioscore. So this particular realm's bioscore is about 7,000. Part of that, and that bioscore is actually an asset. It's a financial asset that has a value, which we call the biocultural unit. Here, for example, you can see that this community together in this realm has earned about roughly 6.5 biocultural units, which is 6,400 bioscore. More importantly, you can see what are the activities that bring that value that I said was being missing when we were talking about the incredible work that the operators and the owners and the other stakeholders are doing. How do we capture that value? We capture that value through 5 pieces of information or data. One would be, of course, the biodiversity present there, and the other would be the monitoring. How often are people monitoring? When I say monitoring, please do not think of it as ecological monitoring, measuring transects and all that. No, it's just looking, being aware of what's around you. How often are they monitoring? Is it just one person going every day, or is it 100 people going just one time? Or is it 20 people doing 20 times in a month? We capture that metric, and then we capture what is the evidence that is being uploaded into the platform, like Lipa was talking about how they're educating the children. That's a beautiful work. Are we capturing that value? What is the evidence for what the work that has been done? And it could be as simple as a photograph's uploaded, but the community says, yes, this happened. That's the evidence. And then lastly, we have so many people on our system that look at all the data that comes in, and they start verifying and allocating a value to that piece of data. The more qualified you are in terms of how often you've contributed to the piece, to that realm, the more your rating matters to that realm. We combine these pieces to give you what we call the bioscore or biocultural unit. Now, So this is what the resort sees in the dashboard. What does a guest see? Remember, I said the guest comes in, maybe just logs a moment, a sunset, or maybe a moment where a child is interacting with one of the wildlife in a safe setting. What happens to the guest? Every time the guest submits some piece of information from that location, that realm, that is actually converted into a score once it's been verified. Now, this all happens in the background. You do not see any of this at the front end, or the guest is not even aware of any of this. It's converted into what we call a bioscore, and the guest is basically harvesting bioscore. This particular guest in their wallet has like 3.89 biocultural units harvested. They probably have traveled to a lot of the resorts where there are realms and have contributed a lot of data. So that's what they've harvested. Now, this is sitting in their wallet. They can donate it back to the community. They can redeem it for some of the services provided by the resort, partly, or they can say, I'm going to keep it and I'm going to travel to other resorts. And maybe at the end, I will decide what I want to do with it. So it's like an asset that sits in their wallet. Corporations, airlines, banks, individuals even may decide to purchase this either for their CSR reporting, TNFD disclosures, or their ESG reporting, or simply because they want to support some good work happening somewhere and keep an asset in their wallet. Lastly, how do we know this is all true? This is all real? How do we keep an audit of what's exactly happening? Everything we do is public. Every calculation, every determination of what the value is of a piece of information that comes from that land, it's public, it's traceable. All the members of that particular piece of land that have contributed data, they're listed here on the screen in the dashboard, and the pie chart represents the proportional contribution from each of these members for that realm. This is it. This is all we do. We engage the guests with the land. We engage the community with the land, which they're already doing anyways. We just capture the value, present it in a way that is an asset that can be used by the community, that can be used by the resort operator and by the guest to make the land better. This is live, this is operational. We've got about 976 realms across many continents. And we're happy to onboard others. If you're interested, please reach out to me. But I think given the incredible work that's happening across these resorts, I just feel like there's a wealth of data that could be potentially captured and that could be potentially used to further the increase the biocultural health of the land. And just a few examples of how these various resorts decide the realms the way they want to be. This is the data that's captured. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time here. These are the founders and the team members. We are very incredibly lucky to have a lot of indigenous communities supporting and partnering with us and helping us do this right by the communities. And I will stop there. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Malika. It's so exciting, and I hope we do see more realms added to the platform soon. I'm going to ping over to you, Molly, to pick up that thread.
Amazing. Thanks, Malika. And as you know, it's been an honor to meet you. I'm so inspired by what you've done to sort of create this game that inspires us all. I've even downloaded the game myself. So here we go. Let me just share my screen. Hopefully you can see that okay. So yes, I thought I would, before I dive in, take a step back as well and ask you all to imagine something. So if you can all imagine a recent maybe travel destination you've been to, or even your own resort, if there's a river or a lake or an ocean there, imagine collecting a bottle of water from that water body. Or maybe if there's no water, maybe you're in the Masai Mara and it's dry season, then think about collecting maybe a pot of soil or sediment from the ground. And in the past, this would just be a pot of soil or a bottle of water. And today, using a technology called eDNA or environmental DNA, that bottle of water, that pot of soil that holds all of the secrets of the wildlife that lives in that environment. So almost every living thing that's recently swam through that area or used that forest or that land will probably have shed DNA into that environment. So that's what we do at Nature Metrics. We take those traces of DNA from simple samples of the environment, whether it's water, soil, even from the air, there's DNA in the air as well. And we turn those into incredible insights really about the ecosystem health and what's living and functioning in these environments. So we're giving the world that new way to see nature without actually having to see the wildlife at all, just using the DNA that it leaves behind. And I think the most exciting part for me and why I'm glad to be here today is that we're putting this type of eDNA technology directly into your hands in the travel and tourism industry. And we have quite literally chased biodiversity to the ends of the earth. So clients are going to glaciers that are melting in real time across multiple continents. They're collecting data before these glaciers are lost forever. We've got clients going to waters so cold that they're barely liquid, to remote coastlines spanning thousands of kilometers, and cruise liners, another good example, collecting eDNA as they sail along these incredible global routes, filling vital ocean data gaps as well. So, why are we going to the ends of the earth with you? It's because the most critical biodiversity data doesn't always live in a convenient place. It lives exactly where many of your guests are already traveling and exploring and experiencing. And when we look at sort of, I've put a few simple like examples of projects that we work on. We're not just looking at data points or single projects. We're looking at a global movement to generate data around the world. So we have thousands of projects in over 110 countries. So as you can imagine, there's many individual local actions and projects that are adding up to have that massive global impact. And right now, the travel industry is really stepping up to lead this charge as well. So we work with lots of different types of businesses, but the travel and tourism sector are uniquely positioned because you can turn your staff, your guides, your connections with national park teams, and even your guests can all become citizen scientists and collect this data as well. It's happening right now. It's happening as our clients will be monitoring coral reef health in Belize, you can see here, or marine life in the Red Sea. It's happening in the frozen waters of the Arctic. And for the travel industry, I think it's not just about proving that you do no harm to the local environment. It's about moving from sort of passive observation to active participation in nature. And we've seen from some amazing talks today already, there's lots of those stewards already actively participating in protecting and understanding the natural world around them. So by then unlocking what Rosie talked about earlier with citizen science, we unlock that ability to then generate this data across your resorts, across the world if you're globally operating. And over time, you can keep collecting this data throughout the year. And it gives you as an organization verified data. This is auditable. You can stand behind this kind of data. It's scientific data. And also unlocks the sort of power and intelligence to protect that land because you've got this comprehensive knowledge of what lives there. And I just wanted to say anybody can do this. So we've had Prince William on the left here collecting a Nature Metrics eDNA sample. And at the same time, I put a picture on here of here's my local primary school. These are children that are as young as 5 years old, and even they can collect an eDNA sample. It's so easy, and I even still find it fun 10 years after doing this. And I think what's really important for the guests is they aren't just taking photos of wildlife, they're actively taking part in something bigger. So for your staff, it means they're leaving a place better understood than when they arrived, empowering sustainability teams. Even if the sustainability teams aren't on the ground at that site, your teams have now funneled that data up to you to then have the intelligence about that site to make decisions about nature for relatively low effort in the field or like on your trips. And I just wanted to very quickly, I know we're running out of time now, very quickly show how organizations can apply this kind of technology. So here's an example from a cruise liner, MSC, collected eDNA across their global routes. So here's an example of one of those routes, generating thousands of species data points. And they could then share that data back with the IUCN Red List. They identified a bunch of sort of endangered and threatened species, and that helps with the assessment of these species so that globally we have knowledge on which species are threatened and endangered and where they live and what times of year and things. And I just want to put a quick other example on, this is an example of a reef. So you can imagine that there's lots of conservation work that happens around some of these reefs. Here we're measuring whether the reef conservation is successful for biodiversity. And you can get complex data across the tree of life, all sorts of things living on these reefs that you might not have the expertise locally to name to species. With people on the ground, but with DNA, you don't need that expertise. You just translate a water sample into hundreds and thousands of data points. So I just wanted to end by saying, I think we all know that a beautiful dashboard alone with species pictures is not going to save nature. It only matters if it changes behavior or contributes to decision making. And the beauty of these biodiversity projects is that they feed directly into the very communities and people who are already stewards of their land and seas. And it equips them with a whole host of knowledge and intelligence that can be wrapped around the knowledge they already have about that land and the oceans, whether it's indigenous knowledge, other data sets that they're collecting. And then they can have that hub of intelligence that helps them protect their natural surroundings, provide evidence for the good work they're doing that can finance more of that conservation work. And second, for those kind of running travel businesses, this data is the backbone of your sustainability strategy. It takes the guesswork out of nature. Instead of sort of vague claims about nature or margin projects, you have intelligence on nature that allows you to set meaningful targets that are really relevant to your business. And then you can actually demonstrate progress towards those targets based on robust data as well. So this is the kind of auditable, verifiable data that you can really stand behind, but also importantly, transparently report on for the wider industry to follow suit. So I'll leave it there. I just popped my email address and LinkedIn here. If you do want to start measuring biodiversity, please do give me a shout. But I'm mostly very excited to give us some time to talk with Malika now on how we can combine this kind of science with community action to really create those unforgettable, impactful guest experiences. So yes, over to Rosie.
Ladies. That was great, Molly. Sorry, I'm just going to add us all here onto the screen. Okay, super. Okay, I had 2 or 3 questions which I'd already teed up to ask both of you, and you both covered them so comprehensively. So well done on your presentations. They were fascinating, and this wouldn't be an impact show if we didn't bring tech and data into the conversation. And I think you've been able to weave the value both of eDNA and citizen sciences practices, but also how beautifully those can become an integrated part of the guest experience, really, really nicely into your insights. So thank you for that. So one thing that struck me when we had a chat with Malika and Molly was this concept, and Malika phrased it so beautifully, was this idea that no one is starting from zero. We are in this era of data. So this idea of our members of these small businesses who want to shift, who want to work in a measured and a managed way and leverage data as a backbone, maybe for their sustainability plans. You know, going into September 2026, we really have to think about data and as a backbone to communications too, and the crisis of greenwashing as well as green hushing that we experience specifically in this ecosystem. But this idea that no one is starting from zero, you have data already at your fingertips. How would you guys weigh in on this idea though that we're struggling to use it? It's there. Is it accessible? It takes many shapes and forms, but where do you see the biggest gap today between collecting data, because we've dealt with that now with the citizen science element, and actually driving impact at at the sort of place level, at on site, and then hopefully that would stack up. Malika, would you like to weigh in first?
Yeah. Thanks for that, Rosie. So that's a good question, actually, because when you look at DNA, it tells you what's there. And I feel Guardian's platform, it tells us who cares and what do they know. Different signals, but they're the same. It's just how you got that information. That's all. So I feel the best way, if you wanted to make the really best decision, probably would be you would need to have an intelligence layer that would look at a signal, say, from DNA and a signal from, say, a person who's been watching a creek for, say, like 40 years or 50 years. That intelligence layer needs to have both these signals legible to it. Once you make them legible to that intelligence layer, then you've got a fantastic analytical engine. You can bring in all the data that machine or the tool will know how to weigh each one of these elements of information data and gives you option to bring out the best possible decision. And I feel that that's in a way, that's what we've built, is just creating that intelligence layer that knows what's important and why, and who says it's important and when and where. So I feel that's kind of where you end up with, do you want great impact or do you want technology to create that impact? Then yeah, this is the layer you should be looking at and building for.
Nice. Molly?
Totally agree. And I think, yeah, data has to connect to a human experience at some point. So measurement is only meaningful when we can connect it to people making decisions. So I think we all know that, everyone in the room here, and you probably want the information, but it's about how do we get that information about the state of nature of your operations maybe, or even just interesting stories to tell the guests and understanding your impact on nature. I think a lot of people in this room probably want that information, but it's how do we connect that data with those people? And I think the risk with tourism is the same as with any business. Data that sits in compliance folders or is put away somewhere as for a separate department, rather than informing action, is just wasted investment. So I think technology here is closing that loop between what's happening in the environment and then the knowledge. Like I said, we've got loads of data about what's happening now, thanks to unlocking it through things like citizen science, actually linking that to the businesses by making nature a central part of how they operate. So I think it's almost like a mindset shift of the same way you would use financial data in a business. Environmental data should be at the heart of how you operate.
Oh, I love that. I think that's critical. And then just as we wrap up, I did pose a big question to both ladies, which is not an easy one to answer, but I would appreciate it if you both had a go. So what are we going to have to give up if we truly want tourism to operate within planetary boundaries? Molly, you can go first on this one.
Yes, I think I've probably got a whole list, but I think for me the most important thing is that we think about what sustainability means in tourism and travel. And probably we need to give up this idea of sort of narrative-led sustainability, or the idea that doing some margin projects will be enough to change the tide on nature and making progress towards nature goals. So lots of people in this room will have targets for 2030 and biodiversity targets, or even just be wanting to move in a positive direction. So I think we need to kind of give up some of those assumptions that nature reporting and nature targets are only for big corporates, but actually move towards nature data as something that's accessible to people, even in small operations, all the way through to these global portfolios, to unlock real decision making. And that's where the local action can be empowered with that kind of global scale data, I think.
Love it. Malika?
Well, thanks, Molly. I kind of agree with what you said. One more thing I would add is, like, I guess we all have to be a bit truthful. There is no consequence-free vacation, thinking that everything is taken care of. A lot of work goes behind the scenes to make one's vacation beautiful. But I think it's okay to tell the tourists that you got to contribute a bit. It's not just about going to a place and enjoying it. Yeah, maybe you'll buy your carbon credits via the air miles or whatever, but that's not going to cut it. You've got to be on the land. You've got to contribute to the community. And there are ways already that a lot of resorts provide options to contribute. Just a little bit of hard work is needed because there's no easy solution. Let's be honest. That's how I see it.
I think that's a great answer. Ladies, thank you so much for your time. It's very clear from this conversation that citizen science isn't just about collecting data. As fun as it is, it really is about reconnecting people with nature. And as you so beautifully summed up there, Malika, really bringing that consciousness and that conscientiousness back to travel and experiencing of place or experiences of place. So yeah, thank you for your time. And we're going to move on to the next panel. I'm going to hand the baton back to Joy. If anybody would like to engage with Molly and Malika, their details will be shared. We'll pop them in the chat, find them on LinkedIn, and really dive in with their work because it's awesome.